Humanity arrived on the interstellar scene with more than a little chaos. Unlike most species, they didn't break free of their solar system and send out an attempt at an interstellar greeting from whatever primitive ship they used. Nor did they intercept some kind of external signal and take it as a sign to build for the stars. Rather, there was a crash landing. An old faster-than-light probe crashed into their colony on one of the other planets in their solar system. Humanity didn't really know what to do with it, but they worked out how to work the faster-than-light drive. Once they got that working, they built a shell around it. A big airtight shell with all that they needed to live. Without direction or really any understanding of what they were supposed to be aiming for, they hurled themselves into interstellar space, the FTL drive shooting them across the galaxy. As you would expect, it didn't go very well, but contrary to the most common undirected FTL jumps, they didn't end up in dead space or inside a star or other gravitational anomaly. Rather, they appeared on the border of a rather aggressive species called the Krull. The Krull, in their infinite wisdom, decided the best course of action was to try and take this new species captive. Humanity responded by taking over the 2 Krull ships that had been sent to capture them, mostly by being vicious bastards with no regards for the conventions or war or civil interactions. We only found out centuries later that at the time humans were just recovering from a civil war, and most humans looked quite unfavorably on attempting to take prisoners with microwave and electrical weapons. Either way, the humans went from having 1 FTL-capable ship to 3. So what did they do? They reversed the course of the original one, sending it home, before crewing the other 2 and pointing them in random directions and repeating the process. Now, most species FTL drives have unique signatures, so when a Krull FTL drive flash was registered above an agricultural world in my own species space, the logical process was to attempt to ask what was going on. With no response but no active weapons, the standard procedure was to dock with the unknown vessel and attempt to board it. Well, the humans had seen this song and dance before, but this time they had some Krull to throw in the way first to see what we'd do. Being at war with the aggressive species, we detained them with extreme prejudice. The humans decided they didn't like this, and since we didn't have their language in our translators, any attempt at communication failed. The humans, now armed with their own weapons, the Krull weapons, managed to defeat the small boarding team and once again take control of the ship. So humanity had another FTL-capable ship. Well, what do? They finally work out how to direct the FTL, sort of. They jump both ships home, and rather than doing the sensible thing of informing their government that there are other species out there, they decided they would recruit a mix of people, the most adventurous, the most self-sufficient, and those that craved combat and excitement. They loaded up these 2 ships with these people and jumped out again. The worst part was when these ships ran out of supplies. Did they just starve or go dormant till another ship came along? Nope, they would jump to supply stations marked on the ship's maps or on top of shipping lanes and raid those for supplies. They even took to taking some aliens with them. Those that fought with the most ferocity or matched the human mating preferences were offered a chance to join the crews of these ships. Plenty took them up on it. The most frustrating and confusing thing was that these stolen ships had no rhyme or reason to them. There was no organized raid. Each ship was a law unto itself. Some had mercy and would not kill you if you surrendered. Others butchered entire stations to acquire new ships and resources. Then the fact that the humans would paint these ships. Some were painted bright red and white, with strange circular symbols running along their sides. Others were painted to be covered in what we have since learned were mythical human creatures, dragons and the like. And some, the most brutal of them all, were black with human skeletons painted across them. We had a concept of pirates long before humans arrived, but they were slavers and mercenaries, not these bands of raiding lunatics. Now you might be asking what happened to that second FTL ship that was mentioned earlier. Well, that's a very curious story. That ship encountered a tiny mining outpost in a system that was only remarkable because of its high density of base metals, iron, copper, and the like. Things that every race needs in huge amounts but are abundant across the galaxy. That ship took that base and turned it into their own personal fiefdom. And as the humans learned to use the FTL drives through a process of trial and error, and other species joining their crew and being familiar with its basic function. That tiny mining base became something of a haven. Any ship that was flying the human colors could dock at that base and take rest from their raiding, and they could be repaired, refit, and even sometimes acquire new crew. Humanity had joined the galactic community, but not with a hello, or even a we are here to conquer, but rather they joined through stealing ships from most known sentient species, then using those ships to raid other species. The intergalactic politics was a mess for several decades after that. People accusing others of raiding their bases, stealing ships, and all kinds of other things. Only when proof that the ships performing these actions were in turn stolen was given did the accusations calm down. All the while, more and more of these raider ships kept cropping up. From where no one really knew until someone decided to track the entire mess back, eventually asking the Krull Empire what had happened. The Krull Empire at this point was in a mess itself. It turns out that the Krull's taste in food matched humanity's pretty closely, so they were the primary target for raids. 4 decades of having your food shipments stolen to the point where most of the military is spending time escorting and guarding the food is difficult for even the most powerful empires. After recovering the information from the Krull, the intergalactic community finally turned its eyes towards Earth, arriving to find just as much of a mess as the intergalactic community was, but on a much smaller scale. The human governments had gotten their hands on various tools and weapons from the raiders, purchased at immense prices to be used to enrich their economies or themselves, the weapons to be used against their foes. Earth itself had become a near-constant low-level war as humanity tried to wrest control of these world-changing devices from one another, and the populace wanted to live a life away from the constant threat of alien technology being used to wipe huge swaths of them from the planet, an escape that the fleets of stolen ships gladly provided. So there wasn't even a central government to blame for these madcap humans stealing ships and crews, then using those stolen ships and weapons to raid for supplies. There was not really any unified humanity any longer, just an ever-growing fleet of ships, each a law unto itself and whose nature and temperament was dependent on the captain. There were humans who hadn't been born on Earth and saw this nomadic raiding culture as their way of life. The galaxy's nature and political scene changed immensely from the arrival of a single species. Trade is now calculated with a loss margin based on human activity in the areas it is passing through. Wars are now far slower and more expensive because you have no idea when, or even if, the human raiders will turn up and steal your supplies, or be paid by your foe to break your supply lines. Even simple mining expeditions have to be careful unless they want to risk coming across a human outpost and being inducted into the crews of other ships and their vessel repurposed into a boarding device for acquiring new ships. This is how humanity joined the galactic community. They rebuilt a crashed ship, used it to steal 2 more, and they just went from there. It is only in recent years that we have finally acquired enough data, mostly through trading with these raiders, to finish putting together a full translation matrix and start communicating with these humans. The thing that makes it difficult is that non-humans born into their society are taught the human language as well as their mother tongue, and they view the human language as some kind of secret code to be used only amongst those in the know. The majority of humans are more than happy to remain as these space pirates, or as some call themselves space Vikings. Some, however, seem to be closer to traders and merchants with no qualms about shoot first, negotiate later attitude. Humanity has joined up here in the stars, and they did it by stealing things, and they don't plan to stop.